Good morning. Hi, Gary. So let's start with Lama Tsukapakuru Yoga and then Refuge Bodhichitta. From the heart of the sever of the hunted deities of the Chitta, on the peak of cloud resembling a clump of screenly washed fresh king of Sandrapa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me on the line throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme full of merit from a mind of faith, please abide 100 inns to spread the teachings. Your holy mind is the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanations is an ear ornament of those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful, will go renowned. To you are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Pleasant drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lights, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I've collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervor and regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age, and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the eight worldly concerns. Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect pure holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dhammakaya. Please let fall of rain of fun extensive Dhamma upon the receptacles of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Now, whatever virtue I've collected benefit the teachings on all transmigratory beings, and in particular may cause the essence of perfect pure loss and darkness teachings to shine forever. Sashi Poki Jushimeto Tamri Ramlingshi Nidegempadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Girdrokunamda Shin La Chupasho. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losang Drakpa, where the morality of an eminently pure way of life was courageous and extensive conduct to the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the ego of the two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idang Guru Ratna Mandala Kamli Atayami. But the force of having fervently requested in this way, whole of beings of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one, enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows on the opening of pure white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. In page 13, we will recite the 5-line Mixima verse 3 times. Mimetse te chen chen rezi, jime kimbe wampo jampe yan, dupo malu jomze sanweda, kanche kimbe tsugyen tsongapa, losan drakpe shabla sowade, mimetse te chen chen rezi, jime kimbe wampo jampe yan, dupo malu jomze sanweda, kanche kimbe tsugyen tsongapa, Losandra Veshavla Sawade, Mimete Wete Chen Chen Rezi, Jime Kimbe Wambo Jampe, Dubo Malu Jamze Sanweda, Kanche Kimbe Tsunge Tsongapa, Losandra Veshavla Sawade.
Sanji
Cholan
Chetan
Sogi
Soji
Chonam La
Chonamla
Chanchu
Chanchu
Badu
Badu
Dani
Dani
Kapsuchi
Kapsuchi
Dagi
Dagi
Chushegi
Chushiki Bondala
Betsonagi Drola
Drola
Penche
Benji
Sangye
Sangye
Truba
Drupasho
Sho
Sanji
Cholan
Chetan
Sogi
Soji
Chonam La
Chonamla Chanchu
Chanchu
Badu
Badu
Dani
Dani Kapsuchi
Kapsuchi
Dagi
Dagi
Chunyegi
Chushiki
Betsonagi Drola
Drola
Penche
Benji Sangye
Sangye Guba
Drupasho
Sho
Sanji
Cholan
Chetan
Sogi
Soji
Chonam La
Chonamla Chanchu
Chanchu
Badu
Badu
Dani
Dani
Kapsuchi
Kapsuchi
Dagi
Dagi
chushi
Chunyegi
gibi tsonam
Betsonagi
ji
Drola
rolam benji
Penche
sanji
Sangye
drupara
Drupa Sho
sho. Kanki tuzi nizoni tawa tamchi pambi chiri tambi chun tenzi kodam kela changse lo. Good morning everyone.
Is it really good?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Sorry. Tadiri nganzu tsamdi jidang kazan da minjuki dombal lembi choga shebi kabdula ya jorngun juksum nani jorwi kordi kazingi mo shuche tiring mushula ya ancha tradik chewa na nganzu dombi choga che gos tari tradik mewa inza ani nganzu ma loksha gos ra
Tradisena Tradikanda China.
chi chobando phu kaza chiglara
Hmm.
adindi yewa na ani nganzu domba ngus land or chera
Chesan dila den tanda de chisham la dawan de yancha phe de mixi dile.
믹스케 공홍도 지어 사마레
Okay.
근데 샤샤라 공홍도 지어와니 야보다라
Hmm.
남기기마다 믹스에 데리 데리간서 지 장주선의 동바 초가 공홍도 등문 소매는 상간서 다 제마질 치는 디기라서라
Hmm. So good morning. We have started in the previous session to look at the section of adopting bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, through ritual, which is part of the stress of the path of those practitioners of the great scope, which is part of the presentation of the stress of the path of enlightenment. It's a text that we covered during the Friday morning teachings. Now, as we're going through that ritual for adopting bodhicitta, Geshe said in the previous time that if we, no, we've covered the preparation session of the ritual. Then now we're going to get to the actual ritual. And Geshe was making that suggestion that if you want to do it together today, then we can make preparations for that and take the kind of mind of enlightenment together. Otherwise, we can just continue with the text. Now, kind of looking at what we have here, it seems that we haven't made special preparation for that, have we? So, no, if we haven't made special preparations, then we can maybe just go read through the text.
데레셔다 무지 초가디 이번니스 무지 초가라야 다 가르치 고레스라운디 아니 초가디 지단 초가 아니 비 domba songwe kabdulaya domba songwe kabdulaya ani lebin yoba chikdan lebin ngusupta ani mebi toni domba lensu ni ta yongda doji res ro res chidan tanda kabdir lebin yoba shisha chene mado lebin mebi lukti ani kabdilaya sungumda asra 인자 다 레벨 여바 시자 지온데 레벨 온 domba 징인게 라마 텔야 아니 domba 무긴 두시 게데 아니 차츠고 그레스 차츠와다 연피와다 멘다포로서 치고 그레스 온다 데네 라마로 뎨빈 두시 게라 차츠데 연젠다 멘다폴라스
So then with respect to how, if you do take upon yourself bodhicitta through ritual, the way to do it is explained in two ways. So you can do it either the presence of a master, or you can even do it by yourself when there is no master that is actually present, but you can still take upon yourself bodhicitta without a master. Now, although it could be done in those two ways, here, the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains that is making the assumption that you're taking in a particular scenario where you do have a master presiding over that ritual. So then, in that case, Lama Tsongkhapa says, you adopt a mental attitude in which you consider the Lama to be the actual teacher, which means you consider the Lama to be Buddha, a Buddha, and then adopting that mental attitude, you offer prostrations, you make offerings, you make the mandala offerings, and then the ritual begins. So in relation to that, here Lama Tsongkhapa says in his presentation, making a request and going for refuge, the student gathers, the student generates a perception of his guru as the teacher, which means that making the assumption that the guru or the lama, the teacher, is present during that ritual, generating the perception of the guru as the Buddha, as the teacher, prostrates to him and make offerings to him, including a mandala.
Tirida chitangi dushi sedi kechambu shuji redos hagdon de ani rang laya ani lamdi ani chi nilu samu tyongingi ani giwishinyi anchi ani domsum la soba ani jinghingi ani giwishinyi delaya tembi dushi ki tubayna semni tetsam mebi tone tembi dushi ki tubayna an tagarangla ani temba pewyajik ani tembi gi chenlab yongyaji gyasa gyatamba yunguyosares timena ani disungu marada kewi tamba sungu marada kasana temba chomdendi ngombo zoba sanjini ani kanlaya toba meba ani dushi tendu pep takje inza ani di pe mabel di rangi pigi tebi toblaya dushi laya raglegi yanza ani temba senaya ranglaya landurgi ni shinji malong ba tengi di temba re mato dilli shenbi temba singinji te yomara wasra tinza ranglaya shinji malo lamdin chingingi lama giwi shingi delaya tembin dushi semdin ni kiechini malam jabayana temba katin chingi chilabdi gyacha yadam juguyo saris ro.
So here certainly there's a point to think of, something to get when we think of the meaning of generating the perception, the mental attitude of the teacher, the spiritual teacher as the Buddha. So here the meaning of a teacher, a guru, a lama is on one hand someone that teaches you unerringly what you need to do in terms of what you need to take up and what you need to cast aside. Also, that virtuous friend, the guru, is the one that gives you one or more of the three sets of vows. And as such, we then generate the mental attitude, seeing the virtuous friend, the guru, as the teacher, as the Buddha. So then in seeing them as the Buddha, as the teacher, we develop that strong faith in them. And if we can do that through that faith that we develop in the Guru as being the Buddha in an actual sense will come about, or they will be present during that time. So when we think of the Buddha, the Bhagavan, the one that has attained a state of complete and perfect enlightenment, we say that the Buddha or a Buddha is unimpeded in a sense that they can be present at any given place. So whether or not a Buddha appears to you, in a sense of whether they come in front of you, depends upon the perspective of the student. So from the perspective of the student, if they see the Buddha being there, the Buddha will be there, as the Buddha is unimpeded. And therefore, in relation to the way that we correct our mind in this particular situation, if we see the Buddha, sorry, if we see the Guru as being a Buddha in actuality, the one that teaches us how to take up what we need to do, how to set aside what we need to do, and then through that the Buddha will appear to us, you can say, in person, and also through those teachings we will receive the blessings of the Buddha. Otherwise, there would be, you could say, no other meaning or way for the teacher as the Buddha to appear in front of us.
데르다 지단이 로 땅안줄이야 아니 군주섬기 진럽 주비 토니 아니 타와드 탐지 캠비 공방 주고 거라서 군주섬기 진럽 주바 제발이야 군주섬이야 아니 가르쳐다 군주섬기 진럽이야 토바메 버레스 군주섬기 진럽이야 토바메 버레 술이나야 주 줘야 주 투야 다딘 주비게 아니 고타마스나 수수 줄이야 군조섬이야 대바티 개치주레스 아니 비기 다지 람가다마스나 로디 아니 라마 기비신이 기균이 로 담바카디치 잠블린딜레 페브치니 아니 토모 두지낭올이야 아니 냥글린디 빈자바텐사바인사 만주 메다 메난신치기 담바카디치 비기게 아니 센상보 순주자니다 비시성보 개주 겐딩인기 초크투기진 안주 제투야기 까와 메바인사 다디 간이 균이 지그리슬라운디 기비신이 균이 제고야 디마도 아니 람가시 지에 메바레스 다 기비신이 진 제고간자 아니 기비신이라야 템빈 두시기에 토바이나 아니 템비 첼럽든 주바다 대들메나 아니 첼럽 주사기다 가서다 첼럽 용사게 람가라도 마스마 체대주지 차고서레스 디친다 템빈 두시기에 고바 개침 진 송대야디 데레샤스로
In going for refuge, we seek the blessings of the three objects of refuge so that on that basis we can attain the state of liberation and omniscience. And there is a flow of uninterrupted, unimpeded blessings that come from them. And you can say anyone can receive those blessings, but to be able to receive them, you need, as a student, from your perspective, to develop the right mental attitude in terms of the most important thing is to develop faith. So if you develop faith in the three objects of refuge, or in this case in the Lama, the virtuous friend, then the Lama, the virtuous friend for you, would be the pathway for receiving those the blessings, receiving the blessings of the Lama, or receiving the blessings of the three objects of refuge. After all, when we consider the historical Buddha, the Bhagavan, so he came to this world and attained a state of enlightenment. At the end of his life, he passed away, as we say, passed into a state of parinirvana. So for us as students of the Buddha, as followers of the Buddha appeared to us in a certain appearance of being a human being that was born in this world and passed away at the end of his life. For us, looking at our current capacity or ability, we cannot see what is called the Supreme Nimanakaya, the Buddha that has the 32 major monks and 80 minor signs of a Buddha. We cannot see such a Buddha. What we can see directly is a Lama, a virtuous friend. So therefore, if a Buddha appears to us, since we cannot see a Buddha as a Supreme Nimanakaya form, what we can see is someone that looks like a human being. Then if a Buddha does appear to us, it would appear in that form, being a Lama or a virtuous friend. And therefore, from our perspective, if we generate that perception, that mental attitude that sees them as being Buddha, then that would be for us the pathway for receiving those blessings. Otherwise, without being able to develop that sense of faith or seeing them as Buddha, the path for receiving those blessings would be disconnected. So this is the meaning or the import of these instructions to generate such perception, such mental attitude.
어디에 된자 딘디기 두시하고 계신다 아니 착셀디 연된다 멘다포스 레 다디레 데니 다 차사위 젤야 아니 가르치고레세티 다 루그다 직절럼 거들인다 부모 이빌 항아 살주디 테모자니스 다디 아니 부모인 이 항아 살주 테모자세디 아니 툭나 로 베나치 아니 칼라라 소바 아니 게메바단 지강가 메바 어딘지 임바이나 아니 다그람 부모이 이 항아 살주 테 비모살을 주디 라니 테모자르체니 슈고야 대들 투구 매바이나 고마 남기 대단한 신치치네 아니 라니 테모자니 주 셈니 아니 그거 침비토니다 아니 슈고야디 키치슈르와스 로디치고 그레스.
And so the text says, you make offerings, including a mandala, and then it says, with his right knee on the floor and palms joined, he makes a request for generating bodhicitta. Just a note on the translation, although here the voice that the translation adopts is a male voice, the origin, the Tibetan version, doesn't make any distinction between man, a woman, or male and female. So kind of there's no particular distinction in Tibetan language that is made a particular gender distinction. So keep that in mind. So the students, they, with the right knee on the floor and palms together, make a request for generating bodhicitta. So then if you can kneel down on one knee, if you are not sick, if it's not too painful and so forth, it's good to do it. If you find it difficult to kneel down on one knee, then as we normally say, we can sit down in a certain position, we can press our palms together, and then correct our motivation and make such requests. Dadila indicatola gyoya di po chikpola tende lagi yore, po chikpola. Dena pena dila pigetola pomo yeve la casa langa sala zuderwa. Since a poi di casa indicatola tende putam pomo di itan chiden de chigirwa. Since indicatola tende
Kenzara.
De ine di dimachiwa ina
Ale teaching mare.
Teaching resina sumtar than the chick. Sangi mare.
Okay. Yeah. Ani da dini da so tawati so tawati. Ani chanju gisem gi tendo so tabanes. Ra domballeyan di chanju gisem ki wichedo da dinza chanju gisem gi tendo so tabanes. 제대로 군기 대시제바 다점바 양다고 조베 상기 남다 잔주선바 첨부 사첨불라 슈고 남기 담발라는 외한다고 조베 잔주 생계바 대준 다음에 시기비자 레벤기라는 외한다고 조베 잔주 생계도 시 렌송기 버 조토스.
So then in the context of adopting the mind of enlightenment through that ritual, as it says, kneeling down on one knee on the floor, putting the palms together, making a request for generating bodhicitta. And the request goes as follows. Just as the Tathagatas are hearts and perfectly complete Buddhas, as well as the great Bodhisattvas abiding on the great ground, first generated the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. Likewise, I, whose name is such and such, you hear you say your name, request the master to generate the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. And you do that 3 times. Repeat this 3 times.
Deni yu sangi dang chu gobo zu chibi lamden dang gendun chirmudo bi chan san pakbala tu tani zonde chanju mado yu pardo. Ani chedu shawa samjan tamji kebi chir sangi la keb tembo bodang chu la keb ngoda gendun la keb drubi dado shibi nyambi shu nyambi samba chedang kebardu tetawe samba li tu tamji du mudobo chawa nyambi dombo chabo chela cholam harshi shabodan jabi.
So having made that request, it says, then the student goes for refuge while the behavior expand above to the objects, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the true paths that mainly bring about the cessations, and the Sangha, the reversible Arya Bodhisattvas. So the student thinks at this point, from now on until I achieve enlightenment, in order to protect all sentient beings, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher of refuge. I go for refuge to the Dhamma, the actual refuge. I go for refuge to the Sangha, whom I ask to be my companions in practicing refuge.
Tirda darwata tiringa de logo anza anchana tonan chingi yobana injimi di eni shimba chejabana ani tu susu nala ya ro ani bigita pensum chogyo soyalo soba ani chi ra tisu chebe kaptulatini man deshizong chebana ani choga senden chawdo bros choga senden chawayna ani delap tembigi ani chelab chia yachi jadama yung chogro wasra.
So then for those of you who do want to take up Bodhichitta later on, then really pay attention, good attention to this section so that later on you can do it by yourself at home. So at home you can adopt the aspiring Bodhichitta through a ritual, and you do it in this way. So if you do it in a way that is described here, including the preparatory section that we have covered in the previous week, then you can take up a fully qualified, full aspiring Bodhichitta and receive the blessings of that.
Dinza dinangolaya leben consortium pigida ani gamdulyansun dimbe kapdulaya so tavsa ani je leben consortium de leben mus yebi on chebanza leben consortium ta susu nangolaya pigida chikusun tu dengin ding ta zodi ani da leben mena ani tembigi kunyin tindichi ta metame rojiro 아니 개진 매바이나야 디 두시샤진 디 여바 점봉무 수 여번 두시샤진 아니 디 총도 아니 dombasonan digiyoras tinza kap tudu lebe mus mebi kapdulaya lebe gonso shibi tsalaya tembo gonsos ani dijachinarwa ninima kandas jawan lebe se tsik tsama tsalaya tembo gonsos ani jashana digores.
So then it says here, then with a general special attitude, the student makes a strong aspiration and will never turn away from this attitude at any time. And then comes the section in which you're asking the master is giving you the mind of enlightenment to grant you their attention, and then you make those repetitions. No, so here Lama Tsongkhapa explained this ritual and making the assumption that you find yourself at the presence of a master, a virtuous friend, and then you're making those requests to that virtuous friend to give you, to grant you the aspiring mind of enlightenment. So then next in the ritual, it says, Master, please grant me your attention. Now, if you do it by yourself at home, and obviously the master is not present with you, then you can still do it by yourself. And if you have an altar, and it seems that kind of really, if you want to do it in a fully qualified way, you see yourself as a Buddhist practitioner, and you do it in a fully qualified way. So you will have an altar. You will likely to have a Buddha statue on your altar. So that you develop the mental attitude that the Buddha is actually there, that they're there in person. So rather than saying, Master, please grant me your attention, you can say, Teacher, which means the Buddha, please grant me your attention. So you can do it even if you have no representation of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, or the qualities of Bodhi, speech, and mind on your altar. If you have nothing whatsoever, you can still generate the perception, generate the mental attitude, as if they are present there in an actual sense, and you then address them. Teacher, please grant me your attention.
대다 레변 공소스 다민데 시기와 소수다 민자리와 힐드네 손데 지지 장주 년보라 지기 파르도 까니 남지 촉 산지점 된데 남을 껴수치오 레변 공소 다민데 시기와 힐드네 손데 장주 년보라 지기 파르도 최남지 촉 시원 대자데 때위 최를 껴수치오 레변 공소 다민데 시기와 힐드네 손데 지지 장주 년보라 지기 파르도 초남지 촉 Papa Chanju Samba Chirmundo Vigendo Nama Kyausu She Lensum Ju.
And so as you go for refuge, it says, Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is, and here you say name, from now on until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, go for refuge, the best of humans, the blessed Buddhas. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is, and here again you say your name, from now until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, go for refuge, the best of Dhammas, the Dhamma that is peace, free from attachment. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is, again say your name, from now on until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, go for refuge, the best of assemblies, the Sangha of irreversible Arya Bodhisattvas. Again, repeat this 3 times.
Da kunjo riri kyamdrola ya concert ra concert gitsik ni sanjal kyapsu kalachik chola kyapsu chik tus ani riri jade ya thi ani kyamdru tsik shanda mendaya chuwen zebi choga cheta washan choji pande adisha gita dejawa tishison ma goba yin sungu yasre.
The request for attention when going for refuge to each of the 3 jewels, and the unusual words of going for refuge, unusual in the sense that they are kind of unique with respect to each of the objects of refuge. So rather than saying in general, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, it says, to the Buddha, such and such, I go for refuge. To the Dhamma, which is such and such, I go for refuge. To the Sangha, which is such and such, I go for refuge. So this mode of formulation is quite special, quite unique. It carries a certain power, and it occurs with the ritual composed by Atisha.
어디래다 숨번 주기 초가들에 라 숨번니스 주기 초가라야 아니 주기 초가가 따주 아니 랍자 줘야지 har kiu chung ko shebe labjan nam de ya leben gi jobar chawos.
And then stating the trainings of having gone for refuge, here too the master should mention the training that were explained above in the context of persons of lesser capacity. So here we're looking at the right for taking up aspiring bodhicitta, which begins first off with going for refuge. So you're doing those repetition at the presence of the masters. So as you're doing this repetition in relation to the to going for refuge, then also the training that were explained before when we looked at the steps of the path of those of the small capacity should also be explained here by the master.
Dadni nibat karande. Nibadi
choga ngonshi choga
사실
라
우리 저건 로잖아.
저서 말해 딜라 캠도 지금부터
알레레요. 우리 저가 우리 일라만 나온다. 80이 소식 있잖아. 양라도만 80 잡았어. 수번은 80 봤다. 참인지 민능 살타보스.
So then the training of having gone for refuge was stated. Then we accumulate the collections as a preparation for the assuming of aspiring bodhicitta. As before, the 7-limb practice should be done in the presence of the direct and lineage gurus and the marriage field explained above. Then the training in the attitude says the observed objects and aspects of love and compassion should be visualized as explained above.
이번에 레빈균들도 부모 입을 항아 살라 주방 소보양도 롱에 둘은 태문자니 샘께와 차오 담을로자 젠들도 산주 토버 차오 냠도 샘께와 쌈민기 샘디 깨발라 미네 잔주 마타 파르트 마당 냠도 담자와 임비 디 삼바 초갈을 때니 깨발 차오스.
So then the actual ritual of adopting the man of enlightenment says, in front of the master, the student should kneel down on the right knee. Sitting in a crouching position is also appropriate. With palm joints, they should generate bodhicitta.
데리다 데자 딘디기다 면숨 대따위고 면숨기 랍샬라 로 문이나 메샬라스 담자도 마치스 심진기 텐도 심진 탐지기 텐도 다 상기순 유로 차원냠바 쌈 초기 깨나니 샘기기 랍샬라 로 니문이 탐젤라 제비 쇼스.
And then it says, with palms joined, they should generate bodhicitta. Mind generation here is not the mere mind generation that thinks I will attain Buddhahood for the welfare of others. Rather, one focuses on that mind that has been generated and makes the promise. I will not give it up as long as I have not attained enlightenment. Thus generate the attitude in reliance upon ritual. Now, if you're unable to train in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, you should not make this promise, right? So first of all, you should check whether you can make that commitment. If you can make that commitment, then do it. But if you feel that you can't, then here it says don't do it. However, everyone may ritually generate the mythos, I will become a Buddha for the welfare of all sentient beings, regardless of whether they are able to train in the trainings of mind generation.
데르다도 당아주 망체 남의 로지 토너라 비게 동바드 손샤기어라스 저 아니 니anga 쳔보라 아니 랍젤러 마누나 아니 카르치니티니 제롱고 마레스 라바나 랍젤러 랍 마누셴도 비게다 아니 랑글러뱅 모스여바이나 아니 러뱅다 오크르시야도 차고라스라 아니 딘들이야 부모족지 차지 부모족지 이 책임스란 소수 민유션도 책임스라바이나 다 오고르시와죠 고고 땅에서 저러스 아니 학동도 비 아니 초주게 왔을 때 집어 뻔볼에 샤니 아니 제 민유션도 책임스라바이나 아니 참만 고고 땅에서 차와나 아니 예바차고 살아서라 딘자 민유션도 디체나 야부 말이스.
So here Lama Tsongkhapa makes the point with respect to whether we're able or incapable of training in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta. It says if you're unable to training the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, you should not make this promise. So often when we look at our attitude, when we participate in such rituals, we become quite casual with respect to the promises that we make, in a sense that we don't really think or we disregard the promises that we make. And here, Lama Tsongkhapa specifically says, if you're incapable of training in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, don't do it. And the reason for saying that is that it is a dangerous attitude. It is not suitable, it is not appropriate to do it in this way, because if we visualize that, if we think of this scenario in which you have made prostrations, you kneel down, you do this repetition after the master, and you're making those promises, but you're not going to take up the trainings and the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, it is tantamount to deceiving that master in the presence of whom you've made those promises. And also when we think of doing this ritual by yourself at home, so we visualize the objects of refuge in front of us, we visualize Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of 10 directions, and then we their presence, we again we kneel down, we make these repetitions. But if we're incapable of training in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, and yet we make those promises, again it would be tantamount to deceiving them, and this is a faulty approach, a faulty attitude.
야다 비기게 샘케비 텐도 아니 데소나 디그레스라 선제 탐지기 쳐도 아니 라나미 안다버도 상지지 고 톱을 쇼냐바지 톱을 자오냐비기 샘 딘디지 끼비쳐도 면숨 딘디지 끼비쳐도 아니 소나 손초그레스라.
So then here it says don't make promises if you don't mean to keep them. But still it says that if you know that you're incapable of training in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, you can still use this ritual in just adopting an aspiring bodhicitta and thinking to yourself, I will attain the state of enlightenment for the sake of others. This is what Lama Tsongkhapa says. If you're unable to train in the precepts, of aspiring bodhicitta, you should not make this promise. However, everyone may ritually generate the mere thought, I will become a Buddha for the welfare of all sentient beings, regardless of whether they're able to train in the training of my generation. So rather than committing yourself to training the precepts and making the promise, you can use this ritual in just developing the aspiration or the thought, I will become Buddha for the welfare of others.
데르다 마세우진 면숨라 대단히 롱기스 죽숨 초게 렘발라 랍잘라 물럽나 잠롱이스 그라 면숨 기qab스 면숨 담ချက်좀 som발야 랍잘라 라 마뉴나야 아니 비 초게게 렌 초버든 요르스 이니야 죽숨 기 초가 렘발야 랍잘라 라 마뉴나 디 제롱고 마레스 머롱위 루드부터 토미니 겨봐 돈비 초가 망볼라 차롱다 머롱이 캐버데바니 미릭소스.
So then it says these two approaches may be appropriate for aspiring bodhicitta, which means that there's two approaches in which when you consider your ability to train in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, then you can either make the promise of following or training in those precepts, or if you think that you're incapable of doing so, just you can think that I will become a Buddha for the sake of others. But then it says these two approaches may be appropriate for aspiring bodhicitta, but it is inappropriate to ritually take on engaged bodhicitta without training in its precepts. So while this distinction was made with respect to aspiring bodhicitta, it is not suitable to do so in relation to engaging bodhicitta. Therefore, it says it is incorrect to claim that there are differences among the many vow rituals passed down by Nagarjuna and Sangha.
nangi yobano ani lamsang droni shuech yorasro and hawdun the chik sanga lame gi chutinji shuwalaya ani chanju sembi gi dombal lengora chanju sembi dombal malana sanga chu samodi thoguyo mares ta pigi chanju sembi gi dombal lembalaya ani chanju sembi gi lavjalaya lob nyungi shibach mena dombal sonchog modas dombal sonwaina and dombal leni any 펜비 찹려야 네번 바시 차고요 반사 아니 조금도 진짜 상가 라메기 추도서 슈초초 지금 매버디 더줄이야 대바이는다 자세 자담바 렌도 왔어 더줄 세밀 샤니 아니 직소수 아니 추기 냠nen디 아니 직소수 피기게 랑길로 랑라야 고도 마게 반사 대다 아니 삼비토니 아니 최 냠nen지야 겐자다 무슨 림비 지금 루트와나 아니 팬도 쉬우지라 디메나 아니 냥가지 차르고요 도와서라 디주 신고해지래 도와서라.
So here Lama Tsongkhapa is being very direct, using this, you can say, strong language, or a language in which he really makes a point in saying that if you're incapable of doing it, don't do it. It's really strong in saying that. So then when we think of our attitude with respect to that, and how we then sustain this attitude with respect to other sets of teachings that we may receive. So if there's a Lama in the vicinity that is giving tantric instructions and empowerments and such, we immediately rush to take those instructions, empowerments, and so forth. But then in the context of receiving a tantric empowerment, such, for example, the highest empowerment of high secret tantra and such, it comes together with the Bodhisattva vow. And without taking on the Bodhisattva vow, you cannot really take an empowerment. But then when you take on the Bodhisattva vow, you're taking the vow of engaging Bodhichitta. So then if you cannot train in the precepts of engaging Bodhichitta, you can't really take the vow. So then if you continue with the ritual in which you receive an empowerment, in which the prerequisite is taking the Bodhisattva vow, and you cannot really train in the precepts of the engaging man of enlightenment, there would be only faults for you, kind of only faulty situation will come about. There would be no benefit in doing that. And therefore, definitely we need to apply that to our personal situation. And particularly we can examine our mind, because our mind is not hidden to us, right? So we can look at our mind and see whether we can train in the precepts of engaged bodhicitta. So then if we take it on into a practice, just as Lama Tsongkhapa explains here, we will reap the benefit of this practice. Whereas if we do not practice it in a way that it is explained here, well, we'll not get that benefit. It will be false for us.
예, 당공 글라마 주게 아니 상가 그치 동바 짐발라 소바다 아니 제단 아니 담자 토니 로 네팅 토니다 난게 여러스 로 양까고래야 아니 비기게 럽절이 럽문능에 딘디게래야 아니 동바 램바당 동바 짐발라 소바다 다 용용고레스 로 용고레스 이네 또 삼당 거야지 로 양 가시게 가르라고 했을라운디 개문도스가 전주선비기 너무 송체니 아니 녀발이 끼바이나 디그도스 이 전주선비 너무 마송나다가 녀발이 탁주를 해서 이메진나로야 상로당의 저체당의 상담에나 비기 아니 대보신비 추큐니 마고니 아니 녀발이 끼바이나다 녀발이야 규르부 쇼지 하더야 아니 디마도 문도스다 최 사무지 쉬니 디 또기 녀발에 깨바나 녀발은 로고르다이나야 녀발에 규르부 데모고야 레와지기야 반자 개 문도스 쉬딩에 딘디 용구여스다 간지 소수 제고도서라 아니 최쉬는 녀발에 깨바이나다 디 캔서로 저러스라.
So then when you compare the attitude of giving tantric instructions at this point in time to the past masters, those lamas of the past, it seems that the attitude of lamas of the past was to give those instructions, tantric instructions of the secret mantra, and to take it very seriously. But then it seems that nowadays, when people approach those tantric instructions, which are given in a certain context, then you have also, people come along even if they're incapable of training in the precepts. So of course you have those that take those instructions and are capable of training in the precepts. But as it happens now, you have crowds that come to take tantric empowerments and so forth, And people come even if they're incapable of training in those instructions. And it seems that the attitude that is more often than not present in this scenario is to think that it is looking at, so people think, looking at my current situation, it seems that regardless of whether I take an empowerment or not, my next rebirth is going to be a miserable one. It's likely that I end up in a miserable state of existence. I will take a rebirth in a hellish state of existence. So then considering my option, wouldn't it be better than to be born in a miserable state of existence in the hells with having received these instructions, this empowerment and so forth, so that my hope is to, even if I'm born in that state of existence, that I will not remain in that state for a very long time. So this is a way of thinking that you come across more than often at this point in time. Sometimes people think like that. So then at any rate, we need to look at our own attitude and really investigate it, to analyze it and make distinctions which are relevant to our current situation.
Sajala dambali jans, jabu sajala dambi do setting sari. Jinso ji lavjala lo munina, sem keba tsamya, sonam mambu draba konsu zeni. Sem keba tsamlaya, sonam mambu zeba konsu zeni. Kamparu du chumba namla, namba tamje du, tamji ji lobar muniba tedajan debu chibishir, tabji yonsu somba chanju sem keba chadishi gongrum tamboli sombe, jinso ji lavjala lo mulabala, sem ker charwa tam, domba sondu murwa, chesalos.
So it says, therefore, it is incorrect to claim that there are differences amongst the many vow rituals passed on by Nagarjuna and Asanga in terms of whether or not it is appropriate. The advice to the King's Sutra says that if one cannot train in the precepts of generosity and so forth, a great amount of merit is accomplished in mere mind generation. Taking this as its source, the first stage of meditation by Kamalashila says, those who cannot train in the perfections fully in all their aspects should still generate bodhicitta thoroughly conjoined with method, because the results will be great. Thus, it is clear that it is appropriate for someone incapable of training in the precepts of generosity and so forth to adopt the mind generation, but inappropriate to take the vow.
Redadi chikbaros penanganzu sodar ki domba tawo. Sodar ki dombi ki lavjala ya lob nigu mena. Ane sodar ki domba len rungu marwas. Len rungu marda. Lengi yo marda nganzu tandarwa. Sodar ki domba la tuondi domba tangbo tereta. Sodar ki domba la tuondi pigi lavjala ya lob nigu mewa yansa. Sodar ki domba lengi yo marwada. La chanchu sembi domba leondi lavjala la manu na ya. chanchu simbi domba lengi pe mambor domba jingi yor tata jasi jada ma nongdu redo sra nongdu jasi jada ma nongdu redo tadi.
So the same thing also applies to the first layer of vows, which are called the Platymoksha vows. So it is not suitable to take a Platymoksha vow, a vow of personal liberation, if you're incapable of training in the precepts of the vow that you take. And this is just the first level of vow, the Platymoksha vow, the vow of personal liberation. So if it's not suitable to do so with respect to the Platymoksha vow, then also, as it says here, it is not suitable to take on the Bodhisattva vow if you're incapable of training in the precepts of that vow. And yet it seems that there are so many people who do not really consider it and kind of they readily jump in and take on the vow.
Tereda domba samolo chikbarwa domba digi pena sodar ki domba inandra chanchu simbi domba inandra sanga ki domba inandra domba khari imba inaya ane domba digi lavjala ya lob nigu mena domba de zomron wadi domba sama chikbari es aya domba masong kong dombi lavja ngotre chobada ma chobada di yunguarda chanchu simbi domba tawena domba malango dombi lavja ngotre chi dombi lavja son 송 투구 두문도 소스 때네 아니 송 투구 문도나 샤송 투나 넘발렌 줘야기 잔주스미 넘발이야 딘디 믹스에도 왔으라 근데 소들 넘발다 왜나 넘발 말랑고 넘빌라브제 못했지 아니 피 저거 못했지 네 넘발 손되고 문도나 아니 샤 손누나 네 딘디 조금은 그 제발이도 왔으라
Dilla sota ve domba dilla genien tan getsun getsulo nidwa. Senza per di genien chogirwa getsu.
제
So then, with respect to the three levels of vows, the first one is the Platymoksha vows, the vows of personal liberation. The second tier of vows is the Bodhisattva vow, the vow of the engaging man of enlightenment. The third one is the secret mantra vow, the Tantric vow. So the same principle applies to the three levels of vows. It is not appropriate, it is not suitable to take the vow if you're incapable of training in the precepts of that vow. It is the same for a Pratymoksha vow, it is the same for the Bodhisattva vow, it is the same for the Tantric vow. But still there is a difference in terms of the permission given to for giving instructions on the vow or the training, the precepts before you take the vow. So with the Bodhisattva vow, it is permitted to give instructions on what you need to abstain from, what you need to guard in relation to the vow before you take the vow. And therefore you receive those instructions in relation to the Bodhisattva vow, and then you can really check out before you take the vow whether you can protect the vow or not. And if you find that you cannot protect the vow for the time being, you cannot train in the precepts, then it is not suitable to take the vow. It is different, the attitude is different in relation to the Platymoksha vow or the Tantric vow. So with respect to the Platymoksha vow, the vow of personal liberation, there are actually different vows in that section. Some of them belong to lay practitioners, and some of them belong to monastics. So while the vow of a lay practitioner, the vow of approaching virtue, can be explained prior to the taking of the vow, it is not permitted to do so with respect to an ordination vow.
다드니 초가들의 다 샘기 송이 초가니 초주는 주비 산지다 전주선 바텀제 달라 공소 레변 공소 다음인도 시기위 개원되다 개원전다 전다도 진비란제도 출임이란제도 gond비란제 개위서 다기 개바도 제도 싸워다 개발라 지수이라는 개위서티 제대로문지 되시셔 라자마도 산전놈도 설정발라도 주비 전주선 천분 남기 라는 양자보조의 장주도 두 개번째로 대신도 다음에도 시기위 캔 든는 소리 주스 전전이 보는 시기보다 라는 양자보조의 장주 전부 샘개벌 기호 말로서 심지어 말하는 저기요 말하는 저기요 음마주는 우영원지요 용수냥을 만들어 용수냥을 시엘랜스 조토스.
So having explained that, let's look at the actual ritual for adopting bodhicitta. It is as follows. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas residing in the 10 directions, please grant me your attention. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is, and then you say your name, by means of the roots of virtue of the nature of generosity, the nature of ethics, the nature of meditation that I have created, cause others to create and rejoice in the creation of this, or of the creation of in this life and in previous lives, just as the previous Tathagatas, Arhats, perfectly completed Buddhas and great Bodhisattvas, thoroughly abiding on the great grounds, generated the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. In the same way, also I, whose name is, and here again you say your name, from now until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, will generate the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete, great enlightenment. I will liberate the beings who are not liberated, free those who are not free, give relief to those without relief, and cause those who have not completely passed beyond sorrow to completely pass beyond sorrow. Say this 3 times.
다 제도 제국res gobayinos.
This is the manner of adopting bodhicitta in the presence of a master. Teaches one generation ritual says what to do if we cannot find a master, which means that there is distinction between doing this ritual. Sorry, actually, I should have read from here. It says, even though it is not clearly mentioned, it is necessary to repeat these words after the master in the refuge ceremony and in this ritual, which means that if you're following this ritual and the master is present and the master will recite those words, you have to repeat the words after the master.
Derda semge choge songzedi. Semge choge songzedi. Tindiji tonda songogoda da chong bayna sozogi. Ani chaksumse ani menda dordishte ani dus chebayna choge ngabo ani yabu peyo saris. Da di mena ya chakse maduna ya ani pigigile ya sozo pigigita shusatele ya ani yabu shuchene ani di cho가도 때니 메바체바이나다 지기어로 와서 차세 메바체 cho가다로 샘디니 비기다 메바치고그라스.
And so this is the right for adopting, for going for refuge and then also adopting bodhicitta. So if you wish to practice it by yourself, you can do it every day as you rise up in the morning. So you make really good preparations, nice preparations, then you can make prostrations and kneel down. Now, if you're incapable of offering prostrations and so forth, just kind of sit down in a good position, the one that works for you. And you can still develop in your mind, you can visualize in your mind going through all those parts of the ritual and then recite it as it was instructed here. Semkegi choga kaldi la sengi choga de la monsem yamna juksen imba dende sebo mindo keran sama de monse gambarve yamna juksen
di mensomreda da
monsem
ra di juksomreda da konda di juksomre mensomlaya 담자점 송해들어. 디 걸려야 아니 dombalengorda.
Ja kanzela
dombalengorda.
majawana jawo de
chiksa. dombalengorda 디 아니 죽숨 초게서 왔지. 간지 잔주sembe dombaleng비 초고 어디다 데려와.
So just to be clear about the different parts of the ritual. So we have two bodhicittas. We have aspiring bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. So when you take on the generating bodhicitta, the engaging bodhicitta, you're taking on the Bodhisattva vow. And so first off, you take up the aspiring bodhicitta. And when you make a promise for aspiring bodhicitta, the promise that you make is, I will not give it up as long as I have not attained enlightenment. This is aspiring bodhicitta. Now, later on, the ritual states the lines for taking up the engaging bodhicitta, which means the engaging vow. So when it says, all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas residing in 10 directions, please grant me your attention, this part of the ritual is for engaging bodhicitta, for the Bodhisattva vow. Here you're taking upon yourself the Bodhisattva vow. No. So this whole ritual for adopting bodhicitta began with aspiring bodhicitta, in which you have made a preparation. Then in the presence of the Lama, you kneel down on one knee. You have generated the mental perception, the mental attitude, seeing the Lama as the teacher, as the Buddha. Then you make the promise not to relinquish the man of enlightenment until you reach the heart of the enlightenment. This is aspiring bodhicitta. And then the last recitation that we've looked at, the one that says all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas reside in 10 directions, this recitation is for engaging Bodhicitta, in which you take upon yourself the Bodhisattva vow.
The dinza ani the dombadi har mataba sardu tobigi sardu lembigi chogadiya di tonin bugores. Aya susu domba tobni domba nyambala soba chongyona ani nyambadir har subi chediya ani chogadi tonda lengu gros. Da har lenni manyamba yobayana ani konni kondu pevichedu ani chogadi toni 양 디체요레스 저거 디페나데 페나 툰죽도 치라 아 다게도 드는고요 바나다 아니 저게 쓰디 용거라서 용디게 아니 다 메버치야 죽려야 비게 메버치야디 아니 톱네 만년바 여바야나 아니 고네 고 패송 냠비 메버치야로 써봐 양 톱네 아니 냠발로 써봐 줘요나 아니 살이 아니 배 아니 솔추송 냠바 어딘지기다 메버치다 카카시 용거라서
그래서 내가 아마 또 봐이나
사들렘비
제가 이네 사든 데바이나 로봉기 산에 된 랭고를 왜 하면 소소 치고 치는 되게
달로벤 많이나 촉세다라
So then following this ritual where you do those recitations, if you have never taken the vow before, then these are the words for generating the vow if you haven't done it before. Now, it might be that you have taken the vow, but it has degenerated. So you can use these words, the repetition of these words, in order to restore a vow that has generated, that has degenerated. Now, if you have taken the vow, it has not degenerated, you can still use the recitation of these words in order to increase it more and more. So this is what the elements that you find in practices such as the 6th session Guru Yoga. And when you take up a tantric practice where you go through a sadhana practice manual that is called a self-generation sadhana. So also in certain parts of the sadhana, you're taking upon yourself the Bodhisattva vow. So then if you have taken the Bodhisattva vow before and it has degenerated, then you can use this recitation in order to restore it. And if it hasn't degenerated, then you use this repetition in order to increase it more and more.
대단한 르빈 예비 루인라스라 르빈 예비 루인라 르빈 만이난 제대로 잡았니 샘기 저거 주변 잡을리 대들 르빈 매장 다니 장주 샘기 저거니 대시셔봐 샤제토 바다 조주 대시셔봐 탐지 이일라 쌈데 차자바다 저비 저걸로 쏘고 제네 쏘왔다 바다 르빈 시제비 칙방비 껴수 들어와서 거름 가시노스 달 르빈 기치도 봐 샤야마도 셴바 찍바레 시송바 따로스.
And so it says then, this is the manner of adopting bodhicitta in the presence of a master. Atisha's man generation ritual says what to do if you cannot find a master. So if a master is not present, it says the ritual for generating bodhicitta oneself in the absence of a master is as follows. Having brought to mind the Tathagata Shakyamuni and all the Tathagatas of the 10 directions, prostrate to them and do the rite of offerings and so forth. Then, as with the previous order, make the request and go for refuge, but leave the word master and so forth. So if there is no master present, if they're absent, then rather than saying, master, please give me your attention, you leave it out. Or as Geshe said, you can, if you visualize the Buddha or the Buddhas of the 10 directions in front of you, then you can address them. Teacher, Buddhas, please give me your attention.
어디래 다 디안치기 동보 마토버 토버치비기 탑세디 차고로스 다 데니 리제 카사 somba 회빈기다 랍자 남 소말로 줘버세 다 디안치기 동보 마토버 토버치비기 탑치.
And so this is the way to do it if you haven't received the vow before. So having received the vow, then it says here in the concluding ritual, the master should proclaim the precepts of the aspiring mind to the student.
Terda labja joyalgi ta zu rodi karesna zu kunjosumdi kadduina ani majaba chegoyati ro ta kadduina sena ta chik re ta kadduina ta tenjemba dehada yung marda ina ya tü tüsle ya chik chawa chejun kar cheba ina ya ani kunjo tengoya pena chik chizza chentong kala ya ani thoma kunjosumla ya choba piyalo soba 두조다 개체슈 찍으러왔어. 된다 잔주도 샘게 봐인자. 아니 샘게 규조디 닌지레스. 닌지 용사기 시den도디 아니 심장 탐제다 이용다야. 로 이용다야. 간지 아니 비 심장 간다스 여바이나야. 아니 이야와 마트와 레비 촌에 따투고야디 아니 랍자그나게다 조 인사레스라
So here when it says that the master should proclaim the precepts to the students that have taken the mind of enlightenment, taken the generated mind, the precepts are not only with respect to bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, but also with respect to the three objects of refuge. So one of the instructions that we get with respect to the three objects of refuge is never to forget the three objects of refuge. And of course, looking at our current ability, it's not that we can keep them in our mind at the forefront in all times. But then it still says that when we perform certain activities, we should call to mind the three objects of refuge. It is said that even when you have your food, when you eat, when you drink something, then first off, you make offerings to the three jewels of the first and best portion of food or drink that you have. So this is one of the precepts that we take up when we have gone for refuge. So then the master proclaims the precepts that we have accepted when we have taken upon ourselves these vows, and then when we have taken up the mind of enlightenment, we need to train in the precepts of the mind of enlightenment. But we also need to train in the mind of enlightenment, the main cause of which is compassion to all sentient beings. So compassion is developed to all sentient beings, and in order to do so, you also need to train in finding everyone is appealing to your mind, to see them as attractive or to see them as appealing to your mind. You need to train in not leaving out, not disregarding, not leaving out sentient beings, not disregarding or neglecting sentient beings. And the way to make sure that that does not happen is to find everyone is appealing to your mind. So these are part of the trainings in the precepts that we take up as we train in bodhicitta.
텔다 nganzul 당보와라야 견치슈 디 카리어레스랑디 아니 심제 야와 토바다 심제 야와 토비 가서다 아니 고도드 마무슈 치라 랑 견전도 체니 셴 야와 토바다 레고라다 랑다 따와멘티 미차니 셴 야와 토와 랑 길로라 마베 비차니 셴 야와 토와 아니 랑라야 지 누구도 삼치니 아니 셴 야와 토와 ngala gaw thig mundu samne shen yawa to wala so tu samlo ani thar to ondi rangla ya nebi chawa chi rendo asro thar to ondi rangi gi chanju sembi laba ani rangi pi ta chi ani tamchi bi chanju samla login sini ani lama jawa sed jibin dunla ya tamchi shabi ani tamjala ya neba thar to na ani simje tamji gi chedu lame zojang gi kombo tobar chebala ya 아니 발주치 등이 차건서 안 늦수 거래야 쉬우치 sabzabchi 거야 들어 라브자 전주스는 비기 라브자 초도 교와디 디렌도 왔어 디 여바이나 아니 전주샘 기야라야 아니 깔레메바 전주샘 비 넘버송라야 아니 깔레메바 딘디지 차그러 왔어 딘상 안줄라야 윤고르다 지 아니 게임하고 수수 대번 팀만들 수수도 따원 팀만들 안지 감가도 마부 쇼지 연구하다 있는 또 상말이야 돈내 치고야 그러 아니 잔주쌤이 랍세비질라 또 상말이야 돈내 치고야 간지 까지 두그리 쇼지 마대나 산지 콤바세야 되토야 이거 말하다 이러 깔 이거 말하다 산지 좀 된디 꾸지 로기를 제바나 까지 두그리 쇼지 끼었네 아니 산지와 된도 왔어라다 디 먼저 랍샤제 왔어라
So then when we think of our situations as beginners, and Geshe included, including himself in that statement, when we look at ourselves, our main fault is neglecting, disregarding other sentient beings. And we find different reasons, different justifications for ignoring, neglecting, disregarding other sentient beings. We basically take, we take ourselves as a reason. On account of ourselves, something that happens to us, something that we dislike, we end up neglecting others. So we think that, for example, because that person disagrees with me, because we don't see eye to eye, then you end up neglecting that person, because they are harming me, because they dislike me and so forth. For all those reasons, we end up neglecting or disregarding others. So then, having taken up the training in Bodhichitta, finally, this type of attitude in which we end up harming others will be harming up, because having made that pledge, that promise, I will do so, I will train in Bodhichitta, and we made that pledge in the presence of Lama, a virtuous friend or a master. If we contradict that, the pledge that we have made, we're harming ourselves. And also in the final sense, that then acts as an obstacle for our own attainment of the state of complete and perfect Buddhahood. So then the best thing that we could do is to take it seriously, to take it to heart, and to make sure that we do not end up neglecting other sentient beings. So if you take it to heart, then the mind of enlightenment and the training and the precepts of the mind of enlightenment will be developed in a healthy way, in a positive way in our mind. So when then we face different situations in our life, when we find that someone's behavior is, we do not find that pleasing. We think that I like this, I dislike it, I know what that person is doing to me is pleasing or is not pleasing. Well, basically, we need to work out we need to practice to work with all those situations. And we need to also face situations when we find something to be unpleasant, and to make sure that we do not end up disregarding and neglecting the other person involved in that situation. Because the state of Buddhahood requires hard work, working out with difficult situations. And without the ability to face certain situations and to strive to work hard in those situations, the state of Buddhahood, complete and perfect Buddhahood, will be out of our reach. And this is something that we can also see from the life story of the Buddha. We can get a sense of how hard the Buddha worked in order to attain a state of complete and perfect enlightenment. So when we look at the life story of the Buddha and get a sense of the difficulties or the challenges that the Buddha faced, we can take that also as a personal advice for us to kind of remind ourselves that also we will have to work with challenging and difficult situations in order to attain ourselves the state of Buddhahood.
전주선비기 라비기 고급 갑들이야 고급디 다 담진 제투고도 하더라 베나다 만조다 라브숑 포모다 미갸체바이나 고급 약슈디 라브숑 포모솔이야 야샤 야탐바 있다 여러와스라 미갸라야 고급도 여다이나야 미갸승이디 피기다 직사산다 부부르도도 수요디 잠발라 란싱기 피기라야 직 아니 잔들 년경세디 직 마체나 아니 메셀이야 칼레테데와 나물이야 칼레테데와 갑갈 딘디 용거라서라 당한저 라브종 포무로 지인바이나 안 소소소게 감정 기브죠. 제 비기게 아니 베나다 곰비 딩주저는 곰비 딩주 카인 바티 아니 데모다사리 말람 자사리 도솔은 젠다도솔로 안 소소 살아된 아니 감정 기브지도 데바이나 아니 소 칸라야 저 아니 폭독 땅 거야다 아니 야와 더 거야기 근세 거라면도 왔어 다 디마지 왔지 then got doing a chick shingy kin troya shen la ya chick lavia tendi do chick tol dro deva na ani tattu na susu maji wa chadoya ani susu wi nyamlen la ne deva chick yongwa ya yacha yada mare ndo asro
So then when we look at our current situation, we need to make sure that when the opportunity presents itself for us to train in such precepts, that we seize that opportunity, that we take it up. So then those opportunities for practicing it arise for different people. And we can say that the best opportunity to put it into practice is present or is presented for those who are ordained people. And it is not to say that if you're a lay person, you cannot put it into practice. But Geshe feels that as a lay person, for lay people, considering family life, having family members around you, your partner, your children, and so forth, it is more difficult to manage or to take it up into practice, in that there are quite a lot of challenges in that kind of, it seems that when you have family and kind of you work within your family unit, then inevitably sometimes you have to face situations where you care for the one who are close to you in your family, in your family life, and then you become adversarial with others. Kind of, you need to, in that sense, kind of, you need to fight with enemies and to sustain or to care for the one who are close to you. Kind of, so it's harder, you can say, to put it into practice as a lay person, but it's not to say that it is not possible. Of course, it is possible, but in terms of the conducive conditions for using these opportunities, Geshe feels that once you have taken ordination, it can work in a way that is more easy, in a sense that kind of we, for example, once we take ordination and we stay in a community like that, then we have certain rules or guidelines that we have in a community. So you have to sometimes go to practices, to do practices together. We have pujas that we do together. We have classes that we go to, and then at home, kind of when we then go home and continue to do our reflections and our meditations and so forth, when we think of this way of living a life, there isn't any real reason for them picking up fights with others, for finding faults in others, criticizing others and so forth. Kind of this opportunity that you have if you live your life like that is much smoother in terms of taking the essence of these trainings, the opportunities of the essence of those trainings, and putting them into practice. Whereas, you can be an ordained person, but still you find ways of way to argue with others, to find faults in others, to criticize others, and so forth. So if you do allow those things to arise in your mind, first of all, your mind is made unhappy, but also it undermines your own training.
thank you.
Thank you. So we'll leave it here for now. So we will dila khasa target tola de cheo shitansan tanda di so didn't so tadi cheo maresa cheme tuntola tadi cheo ina de chi chen che tugirves che mares domba khasa chawadi nyamda de ki koga de chi yon sigirves yon simares cheme tuntola
쟤는 이미
shana digre
제 당한 님을 갈리갈래로 진짜 먹고 있어.
so chezandila kakela malavna digro.
야.
All right, so let's leave it here for now. We'll do the final Lamrim dedication. second. For my two collections, fastest space to have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, might become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be beheld in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded parts of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice, using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion. May I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings, with the points of the path as I've discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion. In whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted unto his peace, and may the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this graded path of enlightenment, completely due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings will eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths. Never departed in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere